Not content with your content? You've come to the right place. The Discontent Show with Joe Kuzma. Every brand starts with a story. Here's how you can grow your business by sharing it. Now, with today's topic, the host of The Discontent Show, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Discontent Show. My name is Joe Kuzma, and as is customary, I like to welcome my new listeners. I like to welcome back any returning listeners. I hope that everyone who's tuning in is learning something. We got a lot of tips, a lot of tricks, lots of hints, and different things to just help out your content marketing, whatever that might be. There's a lot of words for this, and I think it's one of the reasons why I jump around a lot, because there's just a vast array of things that fall under the umbrella of content marketing. It's probably the most, I would say, the chief term of which all of these things fall under, like under one roof, basically. It's what I call my 5 pillars of content marketing. That is blogging, podcasting, social media, which is like a huge piece. If you made this a pie, the 5 pillars, they're not necessarily all equal, but they're all parts of your effort. So social media marketing, a huge one, of course. I'm going to talk about that today some more in depth, but don't forget, just got done talking about why emails are also important. It seems very old school, but it's something that I encourage you to add as part of your marketing efforts. I know not everyone can record a podcast like this. Not everyone is a writer, but I mean, email, if you're doing social media, you got to be doing email too. And I'm going to jump on the ebook thing at some point here in the future. It's a little more maybe involved when you have to put together some type of material like that. But just in short, the basic thing with an ebook is you can use it to maybe build your email list or your social media following, or you know what, maybe even to make some money. If you are an expert in a certain field and you do the great American thing is to write a novel, so you can be a published author. But today I want to hop on 2 different pairs, not 2 different pairs, but 2 different, I don't know, what's the word for it? There's 3 things. Maybe I'll call it a triangle. I don't really have a word for it, but there's 3 things you could do with social media and 3 things that social media should be when you post to it. So getting right to it, I realize that maybe, and I won't single out some of the people that I work for and work with, partner with in that. It's the reason why I am a partner, because you know what? There are things that I am maybe not as proficient in, and then they are more proficient in. And that's how a team really works, isn't it? We all have our skills and what we're better at. So if I went over a few people's heads, maybe with some of the social media stuff today, we're going to wind it back a little bit to just basic foundation, because I see a lot of things that are bad posts when I look on social media, things that are not formatted the way that, well, personally, I would like them to be, but in ways that would get other people's attention so they just don't keep scrolling by you, okay? So there's a proper way to formatting some of these things. I'm going to talk about that. Now, I had a blog post up maybe about a week or 2 ago about finding how to properly format any images you use on your blogs so then they look prim and proper on social media. As you know, if you share a link on Facebook or on Twitter or on Google Plus or LinkedIn, and once you hit that little post button, and I'm not getting into scheduling in that, let's just say you post it, or we're, like I said, we're keeping this basic and simple today. You post it, and it sucks in some information from your blog, from that article, correct? Or any article. It doesn't even have to be your blog. If you go on a news site or a sports site, or you're pulling up a recipe, usually any well-formed website these days has what's called a featured image. So you're going to want to read up on some of that, because it's a little more detailed than what I could tell you in an audio type format versus visually seeing the actual results. There's a specification that you're going to want to work with as far as your pixels, how many wide by how many tall. Just in short, you want to work with photos that are more like a landscape orientation. That is a rectangle, not top to bottom tall, but a lot wider on its side. Okay, that's the 1024. Guess what? That's exactly double 512, and that's a good number because that's where Twitter doesn't start hacking things off. It will some. It depends if you're looking on a phone or on a tablet or on a desktop computer. You're really trying to hit as many bases as you can all at once. You're never going to get it all perfect unless you take the time and just you're very tedious and make everything custom tailored for every single social media platform that's out there. And if you do that, well, I'm already bald. I've already lost all my hair. So I could tell you it's not the path to go down. Now, if you happen to look at that, you got the photos down, you'll understand that one of these things, when I talk about a triangle, there's three things really you could share with social media. And when you do so, you could do a couple of them in conjunction with one another. I don't always advocate doing all three all at once, and you'll know why if you've tried and done this on your own. That is, you can just simply share a text update. Okay. You could share a photo or video. Those kind of go together. It's an image. Of course, a video is moving pictures. I don't think any of us are that old to think of it that way, but think of it that way. So photo or video, that's the second thing. And then the third thing is a link. And the link is the big one because as far as being an advocate, the reason why the third pillar, the way I have these numbered the way I do with the 5 pillars of content marketing, my whole foundation for the whole platform here, for Discontent, the whole series, this podcast, my whole website at joekuzma.com is everything's got to go back to your blog or your podcast. And those usually produce links. If you own the material, you have your own website like I do, you should be sharing a link. And when you share a link, it sucks in what? It sucks in the headline or title of your blog post or article. It sucks in that featured image. Sometimes now Facebook's making some like adjustments. Twitter will still pull in some of this. Google Plus will. LinkedIn will. Like an excerpt. And we've all seen this. It's just a few words. It's X amount of characters before it cuts off into the ... almost kind of read more type of oblivion, where then you want to tap or click in order to read more. But guess what? It brings you back to your website, to your basis. Now, I've seen some things that aren't necessarily the best, and I know where it comes from. It comes from Instagram. Instagram is all photo oriented. You can't do this stuff on Instagram. If you put a link in your Instagram post, it doesn't hyperlink. It goes nowhere. People have to type it in manually. Now, it's good to maybe still include that because it tells people where to go, where to find you. But if you take like a screen capture of your website and you say, hey, you know what? Here's a blog post. It's up and it's new. And you can put hashtags and anything that you want to it. But if you don't have the link there, you're doing a disservice to yourself because you got to make it very easy. Think of the breadcrumb trail. You want people to pick up the breadcrumbs that lead back to your website, where, of course, your website has your contact information, your products, your services, the whole kit and caboodle. It's your sales pitch. It's your online brochure. That's where you want them to go because, once again, this is content marketing. You are marketing via the use of content. So, there's still a place for photos. There's still a place for video. Usually, if you post a video, especially, or a photo, and you post a link, it's not going to suck in all those good details. You'll still have a link there, but it's not going to bring across like the title for your blog post. It's not going to bring across any type of little excerpt, and it's not going to bring across that nice featured image or banner that you put within that blog post because you've overridden those settings by telling Facebook or Twitter or wherever you're posting this to use the photo instead. In this case, of course, we're talking about text being one of the things. One of the other things, a photo or video, and one of the other things, a link. You're using all three. You can do that. Sometimes you can mix things up, but it tends to get a little bit cluttered, and it doesn't necessarily tell people, if they happen to scroll through real fast, that this is an article, this is something that they need to read. Now, there are three things here. There's another kind of triangle, a trifecta, you're going to put together here in a moment on what type of things you should be sharing in this manner. But sometimes a photo, if you got a picture of something, I know it's a lot easier easier in some industries. Let's just say like you're a deli, a cafe, a restaurant, a brewery, a winery. You're taking photos of that product that just came out, whether it's a new beer or it's some type of sandwich or lunch special. And that photo kind of anchors itself. I mean, everybody knows maybe your website isn't necessarily full of all kind of blogs because most of your stuff is just, hey, this is today's special. I get that. It's a lot different than maybe being like, let's say, a computer repair guy or an auto mechanic with some kind of tips or hints as to what it is that you do and being a little more informational there. If you take a picture of under the hood of your car, you're going to confuse people, I think. So as opposed to, hey, here's 5 steps in order to change your oil cheaper and faster. Then they go to your site. You want it to be something they could click on. So that's a link versus kind of a photo where you may have like a piece of cake that somebody baked. Hey, come in for this delicious piece of cake. If they're already following you, they know your location and whatnot. And they could get some of that information by going to your Facebook page. They won't know where to go on your website to find your blog, to find an individual post or even a podcast. And particularly if you're following some of my recommendations and reposting some of this quote evergreen content that doesn't expire, if you're reposting this and reutilizing it to put forth this information in front of more eyeballs who didn't see it the first time around, and let's say you do it a month or two after you posted and you already shoved it down your blog page, maybe even on the page too, depending on how much content that you're putting out, yeah, that's kind of a problem. So you want to deal with links there specifically. And when I talk about a link, I mean, if you're using a phone, usually if you're on a website, if you're on an iPhone or if you're on Google, there's usually something within your web browser, whether it's Safari or Chrome. There's only so many buttons that are on the face of it, and you tap on it and it says copy link. Like when you go to share something, that's what you want to do. And then you paste that into whatever social media program of choice. Or if you followed some of my tips and tricks from one of the previous episodes we had here, I discussed some of the tools you could use, such as like a Hootsuite. There's the Buffer app. There's Deliverit. There's many of these kind of encompassing programs that will allow you to post to more than one social media platform at once. And if you paste it in there, sometimes you even get the preview right away, not only in those programs, but like on Facebook. Now, Twitter, you usually have to tweet it out and then you'll see it after the fact. And hopefully everything is correct because Twitter's permanent. Then you have to, if you make a mistake, you have to delete it and you have to start over, and hopefully nobody else is like, retweeted, shared, liked it, made comments or anything when you find the mistake. Hopefully it's like right away instead of a few hours later, and then you lose all of that kind of momentum, that juice you got from amplification, which is a word I haven't used here yet, but it's when other people start to advocate for you by sharing and liking and commenting on your information, on your posts, on your tweets. That helps that circle grow even wider outside of your circle. That's amplification, just to let you know what I'm talking about there. So if you make a mistake on Facebook, I think they give you like so much amount of time. You just can't go back and edit anything in the past, but they're pretty reasonable on if you miss something, you have a typo, you could usually go back even the next day and correct that. However, Twitter, it's permanent, it's final. That's why when people say this tweet didn't age well, somebody can't go back and just adjust it. The only thing you could do is delete and scrub it from the internet. And then if it's something that's bad, always be careful what you put out on social media. We know how that is when it comes to anything that's buzzworthy these days, correct? If you put something out there that really shouldn't be, somebody's going to take a screen capture of it and then you're sunk and it just doesn't go away. So just some tips and tricks there. I mean, if you have a flyer, if you have a graphic, you have a poster or something for an event, that's always going to be like a photo type thing. You can mix and match. That also helps you. So I talked about maybe not spamming anyone by constantly posting about the same thing. Well, you can mix it up. Now you could have your updates. You could type something different as far as your text with the link to the event, a link to a tickets page if it's something that's, you have to pay for in advance in order to attend. Maybe you have a poster for it. Now you're posting a photo and you could tell people to visit your website for more information. So you mix it up a little bit, but always think about those breadcrumbs, that breadcrumb trail. Try and make it as simple as possible for people so that it leads back to you. And that's how you really get some juice. You get some sales lead, maybe even find some new customers and clients by using all of these crazy tools underneath this roof of content marketing. So Now that that is out of the way, hopefully that wasn't anything that's too confusing to describe via this audio platform. But just as a recap, think of this almost like a triangle. You got one side, you got text. You're always going to have text. I don't think you're ever going to post a photo without kind of describing or giving some type of call to action, some type of tagline along with it. And of course, if it's a photo, if it's not just a photo and it's something that's like a poster or a graphic, it may have its own type of tagline or slogan on it as well. So you don't have to repeat the same exact thing on it. You could put some hashtags in order to help try and get that amplification building out and have this reach other people. But that's text. That's one side of the triangle. The photo and the graphic, or if it's a video, is another piece of that. Now, the only place where this doesn't really apply is YouTube, because YouTube will usually be the link, okay? You're going to share a YouTube link. You're not going to share the video as a source because, well, one thing is, we know that Facebook doesn't necessarily like YouTube video, and it's going to make it a little smaller than their own video platforms. But there's only a finite amount of space you could use when you post something on Twitter. Maybe a minute and a half and maybe 2.5 minutes. I have to double check on that because they're changing it all the time. But it's not a long time now. If you're in the kind of web video type of deal, those are probably going to be longer videos. If you have just like a short TV spot, those are 15 and 30 seconds usually. Those fit perfectly. And you can make those native video on that platform. But if you have something on YouTube, you're going to be sharing that as a link. That's the third side of that triangle, and that comes across. Of course, YouTube is its own thing. It's a video platform, so it doesn't really follow, even though it's kind of social media. It's video only. You're not posting like a photo. You're not really posting a link. You could put a link in your show notes for YouTube to go back to your website or something like that for more information, or even just if it's like something that's kind of instructional. Here, this is where you find this. This is where you buy this, that type of thing. So once again, text, photos or video, or a link. And YouTube is still a link, okay? Now, the other three things I wanted to talk about is, this is all great. You know how to craft a perfect post on social media now. Now you know what to do. You're either going to type a little introduction and paste a link in, and everything's going to get sucked in from your website. It's going to look real pretty when you hit the post button. Or you're going to take a photo and you're going to just lead in with something real brief and short. That's another thing. Don't be too long-winded with this. Facebook and LinkedIn, they'll let you type forever. Google Plus sort of, kind of. Twitter won't. It's like 240 characters, maybe 280 characters. I might have that wrong. They doubled it. It used to be 140 or so. Now it's in the 280-ish range. It'll depend. Sometimes if you put a link in there, it doesn't count towards that, what do you want to say, ceiling as far as text. Stay brief. Use Twitter's recommendation unless you really have to go long form for some reason, because only the first 3 or so lines are going to show up on Facebook. They kind of truncate it so you're not constantly scrolling and having to scroll through somebody else's post that looks more like a book novel than a social media post. You'll notice you always have to hit see more, and then you see the rest of it. So being brief, make sure all that stuff is there. If it's very, very, very important, of course, put it there, because you want to make it, again, it's the breadcrumbs. You want to make it as easy as possible for people to obtain this information. However, now that you've got all of this down, and I had that little caveat, that little disclaimer, the little asterisk on the side here of do this, not that, here's 3 other things you have to think about with social media. Now you know the nuts and bolts, but what is the strategy behind a social media post? Well, there's 3 things you could do with a social media post. And the very first one is educate. Educate is something like I was saying about changing oil. You're educating someone on how to do something that they don't know how to do. Very simple. It could be very in-depth as far as a blog post. It could be short, sweet, and simple. It's exactly what I was talking about with making sure you find the proper images and make sure they're framed, they're in the right format and size and spec for your social media, for when you post your blog posts to social media. Now, this is the educational part. Is your post going to educate someone on how to do something? Is it going to inform someone? I mentioned events earlier. Hey, we have a new product. Hey, we have this thing coming out. Hey, there's a fundraiser. Educate inform. And the very last one, and this is usually where the photos and video really come into play, is entertain. Now, don't do my pet peeve and always post pictures of the kids, the grandkids, the dog, and the cat, especially if you have them all in the same thing. There's so many businesses, so many billboards I drive through, so many newspapers that I open and I see ads like this. Every now and then, in moderation, it's cute. People like to see things with family, but don't make that the focus of, let's say, your Facebook page or your business Twitter or anything like that, even your Instagram. You still want to focus primarily. You want to give people a good reason to follow you. And let's say you have a very serious company. I don't know, maybe... I don't know. Do law firms do the social media thing? Yes, they do. They do. I know it's a gray area because you got to say, hey, you know what? This isn't necessarily all legal advice, blah, 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 blah. They have to get legal with their own legal posts for their own firm. But what I'm trying to say is you could picture a professional agency or firm there, right? You have a medical practice. You're not necessarily sharing, the flowers or the birthday cakes or anything like that. Those could be entertainment type things. You want to congratulate someone within your company on their years of service, or they've won an award or something like that. Those are kind of entertainment type things. You don't always want to oversell people and just push them to buy all the time either. It's almost like you're shouting at them. These are real kind of subtle things. If they're following you, it's because you have something of tangible value that's worth following. That's where educating, that's where informing comes into play. If you have a beloved brand, like I said, it's something like a cafe, you're the ice cream shop that's in town that's super popular, you're probably going to have a built-in audience anyways, and they're going to follow a lot of what you do. But at the same time, you may turn off a lot of people by just sharing a lot of things and making it your personal playground. So be careful with the entertainment thing. Also be aware that sometimes jokes aren't intended for everyone, and you don't want to put yourself in a position where you may offend someone with something that you post out in, this is the public persona. If you do something private, leave that for your friends, your personal Facebook, friends and family. They get to see that type of stuff. Maybe if you have a locked personal Instagram, share those things there. Leave the professional things more to your business face, your public face of your business there when it comes to social media. Now, I did mention on Instagram, you can't necessarily do a link. So how do you educate and how do you inform? Well, inform's kind of easy. Like I said, if you have a poster or something that's like, here, this is a flyer for our event that's coming up, that might fit in the format of Instagram because it's more visual. But in order to educate someone, one thing I like to do is if you pull up one of these, there's a bunch of them. You could just look online somewhere where you can make your own kind of motivational posters. You put a quote on there. Take a quote, take a little soundbite that you have that's at the crux of whatever you just made your blog post about, whatever you're trying to inform or educate someone about. Inform works too. And there you go. You just put a little quote in there and you could let people know to visit your website, for the latest update on your blog. Even if it's a podcast, little harder to put visually. If you have a guest, that's pretty easy because you could always have a photo of the guest or a logo of their business or something of that nature. So it still works to some degree, even though you don't have the actual juice from having a link, and that breadcrumb trail is basically severed because of the way Instagram is built only upon photos. But you could still accomplish any of those three things the same way. I'm assuming most of the time, if you're entertaining, it's probably going to be something that's photographic or a video. So that also plays into Instagram. Also be aware there are time restrictions when it comes to some of the video. Now they're starting to get out there with this Instagram TV type thing. I think it's IGTV, and they're going to be making some of this a little more accessible, maybe allow you to maybe play with longer videos. This is all Facebook, by the way, who, like I said, They want to get some of that piece of the pie that YouTube has, and they're trying to figure out by hook or by crook how to crack the nut against the giant that is YouTube. And they're leveraging Instagram as part of that. So you're going to see some changes with Instagram in the future as well, as far as how it may become more of a video platform. But once again, I've talked about having all your eggs not necessarily in one basket, how you could share all of these things that I'm talking about on multiple platforms all at once. You could go back, take a look at some of the archives of the Discontent Show. I talk about some of the tools that you could use. I talk a lot about strategy. I talk about maybe extending yourself too far if you're on too many social media platforms, or why you should be blogging or podcasting, or yes, even emailing. So I encourage you to go back, take a look at some of the previous episodes. Nothing is really dated content here. I like to talk more practically to try and get your mind going so you could simplify these things and be very efficient and be able to be a great content marketer, be able to blog, be able to podcast, be able to post on social media, be able to email, and maybe even eventually, like I said, that great American dream, as American as apple pie, writing the great American novel. So until next time, folks, if you have any questions for me, feel free to visit the website. It's joekuzma.com, JoeKuzma.com. My personal website, you'll see the Discontent branding on there. There's a blog. There's always at least one or two blog posts a week. They don't necessarily go hand in hand with the podcast material, so you're going to learn and pick up even more things. And of course, feel free to contact me. Ask me some questions. Maybe your topic will even be discussed here on the program. Until next time, my name is Joe Kuzma. Be safe, be good, and I will catch you later. Hi folks, this is Joe Kuzma. No, don't worry, you're not hearing things twice. I'm just here to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for listening to today's show and being a follower and subscriber of the Discontent Podcast. And I want to remind you that if you're interested in more information about all the various things it is that I do, whether it be about this show, content marketing, or you want to ask a question, you may visit me at joekuzma.com. That's JoeKuzma.com. Or you can follow me as well on Facebook. Make sure you get the page and not the personal profile. Sorry, it's only for friends and family. Also on Twitter at Joe_Kuzma, LinkedIn or Instagram. Also, don't forget, if you haven't already, subscribe, whether that be on iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast provider, so you don't miss out on any of the great episodes that we have. Once again, thank you again for your support, and I look forward, as always, to speaking and interacting with each of you again soon.